Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to introduce Amy Tuininga. Amy Tuininga, PhD, is the director of Montclair State University's PSEG Institute for Sustainability Studies. Projects involve aspects of the environment, energy, water, food, natural resources, and economies that collectively function to build sustainable communities. Her topic is From Global Disturbance to Community Resilience. Please welcome Amy and the other redhead in the room, Amy Tuininga.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for asking me. So our speakers today have focused on the people aspect of sustainability and the profit aspect of sustainability, but I thought I'd kind of round it out with a little bit more on the environment. So when I started in setting Montclair in a global context, so when I started my trek around the globe, I don't think we have a pointer. Atop this peak in the high Arctic, north of the magnetic North Pole, I was incredibly aware of my connection to the environment and the natural resources that were available to me. But what I was not aware of as a young 20-something just out of college, as probably many others, was the importance of the connection to my connection to the environment and the range of the diversity of the way that people value their connection to the environment, how that relates to our social structure and our economics within a society, within a town. So I'm going to focus more on the ecological aspect today. So taking a look, setting us in the context of the global environment, people that live like in Penang Island are very, very aware of their connection, where they're getting their food and their natural resources from, because they're inches above the sea level. So as we're faced with climate change and global threats, they're very aware and very connected to their environment, as are people in Bangladesh. So their livelihood and their existence is right there connected to how our global changes are affecting the environment. Same with the Netherlands. So places where people are living really close to the sea level, they've been working for years and years on how to face that challenge. And some of our challenges are really things that people are doing on a global basis, like emissions of fossil fuels that are affecting our entire planet. Others are more regional. So emission of pollution from a smokestack, like this Ohio Edison energy plant, comes downwind and lands on New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. Those states have banded together to sue these power plants, and some of my own data were used in that lawsuit to ensure that we have healthy environments here and aren't affected regionally. Other kinds of things happen very locally. So what we're doing in our own backyard as far as littering, not cleaning up lead paint, things like that are affecting us at a very local level. Some cities are very aware of this, the global threats. So as climate change is affecting sea level rise, cities like Rio de Janeiro here are affected not only by large climate events, but also things like increased populations of insects affecting things like spread of disease, like the Zika virus, which then comes back to tie into the economy because now people are a little more hesitant to go travel to a place like this, so it's affecting their tourism. So all of these things, these aspects of sustainability really are tied together. And when we look at cities like that, we see how their planning is trying to help make those cities more resilient. And what do we mean? We've heard a lot about resilience lately. What do we mean by resilience? Well, urban resilience is the capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems within a city to survive, adapt, and grow, no matter what kinds of chronic stresses and acute shocks they experience. We could expand on that for sure. But from disturbance theory, we see that there's actually one other component that isn't talked about much at all. And so when you're talking about a big disturbance like Hurricane Sandy affecting a town or a city, you might want to be able to be resilient and bounce back very quickly. But when we're planning, we want to think about resistance. We want to think about how you can resist being hit by that storm. How can we build an infrastructure that isn't going to be affected so much in the first place? So there's two components to disturbance. Resistance, building it right in the first place so that we can withstand moderate level of storms, and then being resilient and bouncing back very quickly. And in order to do this, we need to take a look at where we lie in the larger landscape. So this is inspired from Mannahatta, Eric Sanderson's work. He's at the Wildlife Conservation Society. So taking a look backward 400 years to 1609 when Henry Hudson first hit Manhattan, what did it look like? What did Montclair look like hundreds of years ago? So when we look at the natural environment on your right, and then we look at how we've impacted that, and we want to infuse and incorporate components of that natural environment, it's important to know what it was. And so, for instance, here in Hoboken, we have less green infrastructure, and I'll tell you in a minute about the ecosystem services that green infrastructure provides, but it is important to have. Singapore, on the other hand, which is one of the world's most resilient cities, is very good at incorporating green infrastructure into their cities. City Hall in Chicago, the roof of City Hall. And this is the Brooklyn Range. So when we take a look at sustainable cities, there are a number of indices that have taken into account different variables and incorporated them into analysis. And Arcadis has done this, published a report in 2015. Frankfurt, London, and Copenhagen came out as 1, 2, and 3, respectively, the top 3 most sustainable cities in the world. They took into account aspects of people, planet, and profit, and a number of variables, and I can share with you the report. It's very detailed, and they give the sources of data that they pulled the data from. So then they averaged across those 3 categories, the people, planet, and profit, to generate their ranking of cities throughout the world. That was taken into account the non-green infrastructure and the built environment. But then there's another index. The Green Siemens conducted another analysis, and this focused just on the green aspects. So the top cities, they did this regionally by continent. So there was North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and Europe. And the top cities for each region, again, Copenhagen, Curitiba, Singapore, San Francisco, and Cape Town. Most green cities. So again, they took into account a number of different variables, things like clean air, clean water, CO2 emissions, and a number of subheading subvariables within each category. And they promote 7 steps to a greener city. Good governance, and we can check off which of those Montclair has. Holistic approach, having the right policies in place or implementing the right policies. Having great civic engagement. Working to make sure that the development and the plans for development are green. Having the right technology, and also having informal settlements, which don't apply as much here. Those are places in Africa and India where people don't actually have formal housing structures. The big conclusion from this study was that cities need to take the lead. So even though they're facing global threats from actions that are global, it's the local policy that's really affecting the change that's going forward. Ecosystem services are a large part of this. And so these are things like oxygen generation from photosynthesis from plants in your environment, carbon sequestration to offset the CO2 emissions from fossil fuel combustion, water retention in soils, so having less pervious surfaces and having more impervious surfaces, more green space, more soils that can filter the water, that can retain water and help with drought and help retain water in the face of a flood. So Robert Costanza in 2011 estimated the value of total global ecosystem services to be $125 trillion per year. Ecosystem services contribute more than twice as much to human well-being as global GDP. More than twice as much as global GDP. So there's something called nature deficit disorder. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's when people aren't in connection with nature, they suffer things like depression, anxiety, obesity, asthma, a whole host of health-related issues. And so the ecosystem services tie into promoting or getting rid of nature deficit disorder. There's more green space around. So when we take a look again at our location in the landscape and how humans have affected that, fragmentation is one aspect that's really had a big effect on ecosystem services, and biodiversity is another ecosystem service. So loss of natural habitat globally has created a global loss of ecosystem services that can be estimated to be worth up to $20 trillion per year. So as we're cutting and changing and developing and building, we are costing ourselves a lot of money. This is Bahia, Brazil. Bahia, Brazil is one of the areas on the planet that has the highest level of biodiversity. And just in 50 years' time, we've gone from pretty much an intact landscape down to 5% of the native landscape. And so the estimated damage, so these fragmented landscapes are at higher risk of invasive species coming in, and the estimated damage from invasive species worldwide totals more than 1.4 trillion, or 5% of the global economy. The annual cost of invasive species here in the United States was estimated back in 2007 by Pimentel to be $120 billion per year. So in that context, how's Montclair doing? Well, we're pretty green, so we're pretty good on that angle. There's lots of great programs going on, the Bike and Walk Montclair, implementing herb gardens and using herbs at the public library, providing a lot of pollinator, another ecosystem service kind of space in Montclair. And even a sustainability plan that was implemented long before many other towns even thought about it. So I'd say, there's a lot of really positive stuff going on. And the indices that I talked about before and the variables that were used to generate how sustainable or how green a city is, were focused on cities. So, Montclair's a town, and the data suggests that when you get below 100,000 in population, the ability of people to contribute to the planning and sustainability within their community drops off precipitously. So the fact that we're well below the 100,000 means that every bit of effort you do matters a lot, and you're having to kind of overcome that hurdle. So this is more of a commercial venture, so I'm not promoting it, but we can take a look at metrics that are more specific to towns. And there's something called the STAR Communities Sustainability Tool for Assessing and Rating Communities that also has a list of variables. And I think by taking a look at that and assessing where we are, which goals of the sustainability plan have been accomplished? Which new goals do we want to try to put in place? We can take a comparison here, taking a look at a local community. Woodbridge is on this list, and you can go down the whole list of variables and see how they've used data and rated themselves. And so they're a 3-star community. I would suspect that we might be a little more than 3 stars, but I don't know. We'd have to do the analysis. So I think the analysis, taking an assessment of where we are, is really worthwhile. And so I don't have those data. It would be a project, and I'm willing to partner on that. What could we be doing better? Well, grass is great because it's a pervious surface. There's soil there that can retain water. But when you take a look at the landscape that we came from, we're not a grassland. And so you're needing to use water and pesticides and herbicides and fertilizer to keep that non-native species growing. And I hope this isn't anybody's house here. But the grass part, I mean, having it green is good. But having more structural and biological diversity is better. So now we have more ecosystem services and better diversity as far as what we can provide. We've seen this before today. We could probably do something a little bit better. I'm not promoting, putting flowers everywhere, but I think that having plants available actually provides a lot as far as health benefits to people in town. And the trees, the street trees, the ash borer, the emerald ash borer that's on its way, these street trees actually add ecosystem service value. They add a quantitative value. We can actually put a dollar amount on the value that they bring to people's health here in town. And so we're sad that we may not be able to see these trees around forever, but we can use this information proactively to try to come up with a plan. And we do have a professor at Montclair State who's working with the Environmental Commission to try to solve that problem, and the arborist in town. We could have probably some more community gardens in the apartment for the people that are living in apartments, apartment dwellers. This is in San Diego. And this is in Seattle, just next to a high-rise apartment building. And this is here in Union City. There's an apartment building that's just to the left of this, and the residents can plant vegetables and flowers, and they're just using what space is available behind their building. What contributes most to having a green town? Well, obviously planting natives instead of invasives or horticultural plants. Many times when you go to the landscaping company or one of the big companies where you buy plants, they're selling invasive species. And so knowing the species matters. Planting plants that do not require water or pesticides or weed killer or fertilizers. Keeping the communities clean and maintaining ecosystem services, but also spreading the word and helping the neighbors, because we know there's a regional effect for many of these things. And so if we're helping neighboring communities, it comes back to allow us to have a better environment here as well. So how can we ensure healthy ecosystems in Montclair that will contribute to global health? Keep doing some of what we're doing. I think you might know this lady. I think we need to really promote the great things that we're doing in town. And I think she said that next Saturday from 9 to 11, she's doing tours in her yard. But it doesn't have to be an entire elaborate yard that takes all day. It could be something simple, and it doesn't have to be a plant. It could, you can be recycling. You can be doing lots of different things that contribute. You can take a look at your energy efficiency, but it could be something that's on your doorstep, on your balcony, on your porch, that helps the overall community. And so I think we need to take a look at where we sit in the broader landscape and how that aspect comes back to our local community, and how that footprint that we're making in our local community is going to change things going forward and affect the community. Thank you.